Hi there, my name is Bruce Rose. I am the co-founder of Rethink Drink alongside Matt Brindley. I'm based in Scotland, Matt is based in England, and we work exclusively with clients who struggle with alcohol dependency here in the UK. I'd like to spend a few minutes just explaining a little bit about what causes alcohol dependency, the solution that we have for alcohol dependency that has a 78% success rate, and just a very short time as well, explaining a little bit about our program and how the program works. My background was working in alcohol and drug rehab centre management. Within those rehab centres, I worked very closely with peer support groups, with AA, CA, Smart Meetings, NA, and also with CPNAs, ADPs, which are alcohol and drug partnerships, which are the NHS and government run programs to support people with alcohol dependency. Never once did anybody ever explain to me from a biological, neurological point of view what caused alcohol addiction, alcohol dependency. And when I learnt that process, it revolutionized my thinking as to how we can move forward with the whole process and how we can treat the whole process. Let me explain. When we consume alcohol, there is a biological process that goes on within us. We consume alcohol, it goes into our stomach, the alcohol goes through the stomach lining into the blood carries the alcohol up to the brain, and as a result of that, it forces the brain to produce endorphin in the brain. Now, please bear in mind, I'm not a neuroscientist, so that's a very, very basic explanation. But from a biological, neurological point of view, that's what's happening. So when people say that they're addicted to alcohol, or they're struggling with alcohol, or they've got a drink problem, what they're really, really saying is that their brain is dependent on endorphin. Because when you consume alcohol, it forces the brain to produce endorphin, and it's that endorphin that we become addicted to. So what happens is when someone's young, they drink alcohol, it produces endorphin in the brain, and after a number of years, the brain then tips over into dependency, and the brain then becomes dependent or addicted on that huge endorphin. That's the first stage. Then what happens is most models today are what we call abstinent-based models. So their suggestion is stop drinking and never have a drink again for the rest of your life. That works for, the figures will show us, about 5 to 10% of the population. However, for 90% of the people, it doesn't work. And the reason for that, which took me years and years and years to get my head around and to understand, is that once someone becomes dependent on the endorphin, the minute you take that away from the brain will drop into deprivation, and that creates craving, and that craving will build and build and build and build, and eventually someone will give in to that craving. They'll have one drink, and the huge endorphin will come, and that's what we call a relapse. And then people will go back to drinking the same as they were drinking before, and often more. And that cycle goes round and round and round and round and round. 90% of people cannot beat that process once the brain becomes dependent on the endorphin. So what we really have to understand is what causes the addiction is the endorphin, the huge amount of endorphin being released in the brain as a result of consuming alcohol. So the addiction is caused by endorphin. When you remove that from the brain, it creates craving. So when someone stops drinking, the reason that most people cannot stop and stay stopped is because the craving builds and builds and builds and builds, and people will give in to that craving. They'll have one drink, and as a result of that, they relapse. So that's the process. And when we understand that process, if you're listening to this and you're struggling with alcohol, or you have a loved one who's struggling with alcohol, that may go a little bit further to explain, why can I not stop? What is wrong with me that I can't stop? Most abstinence-based programs, if someone cannot sustain their sobriety, the blame is put back onto the individual and said, well, you chose to have the drink, or you didn't do this program correctly, or you didn't do that program correctly. Where in fact, it's actually a neurological condition. All doctors, all programs, all rehab centres will tell us that it's an illness. So if it is an illness, the question that I ask now is, why is it the only illness in the world that is not treated with medication? It's treated with willpower. I've got epilepsy. It's a neurological condition of the brain. Epilepsy is not treated with willpower. Diabetes is not treated with willpower. High blood pressure is not treated with willpower. Cancer is not treated with willpower. So why do we treat alcohol dependency, which, as I've just explained, is a neurological condition of the brain? Why do we continue to treat it as a willpower issue? A doctor in Finland in the 60s and the 70s who, 30 years after that, he carried out 35 years of research into alcohol dependency that was paid for and funded by the Finnish government. He was given an open checkbook and said, listen, Dr. Sinclair, we want you to find a solution to alcohol addiction, alcohol dependency. So after 35 years and 125 clinical trials, with a 78% success rate, he found that there was a medication called Naltrexone. Naltrexone is an opiate inhibitor. It sits on the receptor of the brain and it lowers the amount of endorphin being produced as a result of consuming alcohol. The program that we run is an alcohol reduction program leading to controlled drinking or abstinence alongside naltrexone and a very, very specific one-to-one reduction program. So with the naltrexone, we will advise a client to take the naltrexone 1 hour before they consume their first drink of the day. You only take the medication on the days that you drink. So you take the medication 1 hour before you consume alcohol. When you consume the alcohol, it lowers the amount of endorphin in the brain, first and foremost, and as a secondary effect, it rewires the neurological pathway in the brain. And the rewiring of the neurological pathway in the brain is what de-addicts the addicted brain, and it takes away that obsessive drive and desire and want and need for that huge endorphin reward. Basically, if anyone's watching this that struggles with alcohol, you'll know what I mean by this. When people are drinking to a high level or a dependent level, the on-off button in the brain doesn't work. So 1 is not enough, and 10 is not enough, and 20 is not enough, because the brain is receiving a massive endorphin reward. So when you take naltrexone alongside alcohol, it lowers that endorphin reward and therefore rewires the neurological pathways in the brain. The process is not something that Matt and I came up with last week. It's clinically trialed. It comes on the back of 35 years of research, and I personally have worked with clients on this whole process for the last 4.5 years. Hundreds of clients, and the success I have seen has been so high it has blown my mind. It is absolutely incredible compared to the results that we are seeing in abstinence-based models. It's night and day. The abstinence-based models are still following the process that was devised in 1935 by AA. It's abstinence-based 12-step models in most of them. And at some point, somebody somewhere needs to jump in front of the big juggernaut and say, okay, it works for 5 to 10%. Now, Matt and I will support the 5 to 10% that it works for till the cows come home, because for them, it's the best program in the world. Now, however, for 90% of people, it doesn't work. So we have to stop and say, actually, hang on, guys, the processes that we're using currently, peer support groups, rehab centres, etc., are working for 5 to 10% of the population, but it's not working for 90%. Now, there's a program here that has 35 years of research, 125 clinical trials, with a medication that treats the whole process as a neurological condition alongside one-to-one support that has a 78% success rate. 78%. A very quick explanation as to our program. Currently, Rethink Drink is working one-to-one with clients. So anybody who is struggling with alcohol dependency, we will take them on board as a one-to-one client, and through phone calls and through Zoom, there's no need to come to a centre or a rehab. We do everything from the comfort of someone's home in their own environment. We have a doctor, a medical doctor, who deals with any medical questions, and he deals with the prescribing of naltrexone. And again, he will deal with everything either on Zoom or WhatsApp. We ask clients to fill out a weekly drink diary, and we will put together a very, very specific structured program based on that drink diary moving forward. So we will do a full assessment with the client. We'll assess someone's drinking history, someone's medical history, mental health situation, current situation, future situations, and we will tailor make a program specifically for an individual to help them reduce in a safe and comfortable, kind and graceful way, to help them reduce down as they go through the program. Once we understand what causes alcohol dependency and alcohol addiction, that's stage one. Then we know that we know that we have a model that comes on the back of 35 years of research paid for by the Finnish government, with 125 clinical trials and a 78% success rate. The number one cause for relapse is craving. The number one cause in abstinence-based models for relapse is craving. That craving builds and someone gives into that. Our program, over a period of 3 to 9 months, will basically eliminate craving. Now, if you eliminate craving, you don't get the relapse. I have worked with clients for the last 4.5 years, and as long as someone stays 100% compliant with the medication, I have never seen someone relapse. Never. That's a huge statement. It's a bold statement, but it is such an exciting prospect for anybody who hasn't heard of this process or who is struggling with alcohol, that's got to the stage of, I've tried that and I've tried this, but every time I cannot sustain my sobriety. What's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? What's going on? We are treating alcohol dependency today wrong. And then what we mean by that is it's a neurological condition of the brain. And therefore, like epilepsy, it needs to be treated initially with medication. The alcohol dependency is caused because there is unregulated endorphin in the brain that creates, over a period of time, addiction. So we need to regulate that endorphin. Now, by using naltrexone, it regulates the endorphin, it rewires the neurological pathway that de-addicts the addicted brain, takes away the craving, takes away the white-knuckling, takes away the obsessive thinking, and it actually allows an individual to reduce right the way down and to continue drinking at a controlled level. Most people won't seek help because they have a fear of ever being able to have a drink ever again. Today, you don't have to go through that process. Alcohol dependency today is completely treatable. The process that we use alongside our doctor and all the work and the research that Dr. Sinclair did in Finland will genuinely revolutionise alcohol recovery here in the UK.